Hey, good evening, everyone. Another Tuesday evening from cold but sunny Sheffield. Just waiting for my sound engineer to let me know what's going on this evening. So, really good to be here again at 4 years on. I'll say a little bit more about that in a bit. Just waiting for. I've got two screens now, so I'm having to. I've gone up in the world now, so I'm using two screens. So I'm just waiting for my sound engineer to let me know. I'll say a little bit about Facebook, what's happening there, and but we're going to continue. The show will continue. It has to. Oh, hang on. Let's just put this on silent. Oh, let's have a look. Okay. Oh, bear with me 1 minute. Right. Good. Good. Okay, well, one person is I've got one eye, so I'm just checking. I just said I've got two screens now. So welcome to everyone this evening. If you're live, that's great. If you're not watching it live, welcome later on in the week or whenever you do watch it later on. So we're looking at moral injury leads to foggy brain. So we're looking at this evening. Yeah, good evening, Sonia. Thank you very much indeed. Good to see you this evening. I was saying I've got two screens, so I'm looking at one, but other bits and pieces at the side of me. So I'm going to have to work it. So we're looking at moral injury leads to foggy brains. If you're watching either live, it's your first time, welcome, or if you're watching it during the week or even sometime afterwards, welcome. My name is Delroy Hall, Dr. Delroy Hall. I'm a trained psychotherapist, trainer, and teacher. I've been doing this for 4 years, celebrating 4 years. I've not really kind of publicized it as much as perhaps I should have done. I'll say a little bit more about that in a moment. But I've got some testimonials which I want to share this evening. I am going to do the session, and as normal, but I will be interspersed with some testimonials of people who've given me the permission to look at to share their testimonials. So today we're looking at moral injury leads to foggy brains. Also, I want to say a big shout out to individuals who really have interacted with this particular series. Also, I want to shout out to I think you might see it. Yes, Martin Dearlove. He works child protection and children's safety. I think he's based in Australia, but we've been interacting a little while. He has some major quotes. He posts several times a day, and the posts are absolutely brilliant. They're the type of posts that kind of fits in with what I'm doing. And quotes and sayings, they're really rich. They have energy, and I love to write to quotes. Oh, it's just writing is one thing, of course, but it's about practical application. And I was thinking that maybe one session I'll ask somebody just to give a quote that they like, and we'll just do a live session on how I then deconstruct a quote, look at it, deconstruct it, reconfigure it, and then reconstruct it in a way that we can actually use it and actually develop our lives. So if you're watching for the first time, welcome. Just to say very quickly, 14th on Saturday was 4 years to the day that I started this broadcast. I want to just say how I did it, what made it, what prompted. If you remember COVID 4 years ago, lots of people in the African, Asian, and Caribbean community were dying. And part of the organization that I was with at the time, we had two senior individuals who died within 24 hours of each other. Somebody went to the local, media, shared their angst about it, and then I read something from the organization which I didn't think was accurate, and I just said to a friend, listen, I'm really cross about this, so let me do something. So I did a 10-minute video on my phone dealing with loss, grief, and bereavement, and then I just put it on the thing. I had to ask my daughter how to put it on Facebook, and then I just thought it'd be there. And I think the next following day, something like over 100 views. So then a couple of my friends encouraged me to do a Facebook Live, and they say the rest is history. And that's 4 years on. I did my first Facebook Live. You remember the time on the Thursdays when we were applauding the NHS workers during that time? So that's my very first one that I did during that time, and it's just kind of carried on. I do want to say something very quickly for my newer individuals. This particular series has been unbelievable. Some of the series I get some interaction, some impressions, and with this moral injury, oh, it's been absolutely incredible. It started off with about 320 odd impressions. Then it went to 400, and then went to 200 and something, dropped a bit. Then 259, and then the one that's really blown it out the park for me is the moral injury, inner angst, crying for external expression. I just looked at the figures literally earlier on this afternoon, over 2,500 impressions. And the interaction has been absolutely unbelievable, just in terms of people, how it's resonating with them. One of the testimonials I'm going to share a little bit later. So today we're looking at moral injury leads to foggy brain. So remember, if you've read the article, of course, I've started with a quote: scars on your soul, scars on your skin. Some are the outside, some are within, some have a story, some are unwritten, some you can see, and some are quite hidden. The whole thing about modern moral injury is that the wounds quite often are inside and we can't see them. And we can be individuals who are very resilient, who can carry on as if everything's all right, but actually it's not. So some of the wounds and scars are actually inside and we can't see them. I just need to look around occasionally just to see whether anybody's posted online, which they can do, of course. So already we've spoken what moral injury is. It's a kind of violation of your values. I called it in one session an inner tsunami, where things have gone on internally. There's been a violation of your values, either how you've been treated, what you've seen. There's a sense of injustice and outrage. You've seen something that's not right and you want to do something about it. So when things like that happen to us, it's obvious that the brain is going to be affected. So how is it affected? The brain, as you know, is like the CPU, the central processing unit of the human body. And this is what the brain does. It controls thought, memory, emotions, touch, motor skills, vision, breathing, hunger, and every process that's related to the body. The brain is involved in it. There's nothing that happens to us, whether good or bad, that doesn't affect the brain. Moral injury also affects the brain. There's a doctor, Dr. Ruth Lerness, talks about that in terms, she's a part of a medical and dentistry over in the States anyway. Yeah, I can't remember whereabouts in the States, but she talks about that they want to study what happens to the brain when people experience moral injury so they can look after people better. And they're talking about moral injury for people who've been involved in not so much the war, but paramedics and certainly COVID. During that particular time, what happened to individuals during that time. I think I mentioned it last week. You had medical staff who wanted to help people but had to turn people away, knowing that people had to have treatment, but they turned people away, and the whole stuff around guilt was really immense on people. So it comes as no surprise that when we think of events in our lives that the brain is affected. There's no escape whatsoever. So And consider this, the moment, well, not just this, but the moment when we're awake, even when we're asleep, but the moment we're awake till we go to bed at night, the brain is functioning, going through the ebbs and flows and the storms of life. It's working, it's monitoring, it's sensing, it's detecting, keeping our bodies together. The brain is operating all the time. And the whole thing around neuroscience is kind of emerging. Science about the function of the brain is giving us some insights to what happens to us when we go through life experiences. You recall from my last writing, the inner angst, that I made it clear that there's inner workings that goes on when people are experiencing moral injury, and the brain obviously can't escape the trauma. And in fact, the brain is pivotal in our experience of moral injury. But what happens quite often is that out of sight, out of mind, so we don't think about it. So one of the questions I had as I started to look at this piece of work: how do we soothe the brain? The brain needs soothing. And when we're in a highly stressed state, distressed state, or stress, or lots of confusion, the brain is doing everything. It's responding to what's happening, but also it's attempting to keep us safe. So then the question I had, well, how do we soothe the brain? Because the brain needs soothing. The brain can't be functioning full speed all the time, helping us to keep us safe. So how can we soothe the brain? We can't take the brain out and put it in a kind of a liquid bath and massage it. But what can we do to soothe or massage our brain when we're stressed or experiencing moral injury? So at this point, I want to just share the first testimonial As I promised, I wasn't going to say people's names. So this person has tracked me right from the first session. A real godsend. It's picturing it's not a business because I've been floating it and she'd get loads of shares. I tell you, but I will be changing the format. But I've been set up for a little while. But I'm doing some work behind the scenes. But I'll let you know what's going to take place. Also, the whole nonsense with Facebook. They changed their policy on February the 16th, and some pages they say doesn't fit the criteria for live broadcast. And I emailed StreamYard to say, well, I've been broadcasting for 4 years on the same page. So I don't know why they've done what they've done. However, what Facebook have said, I've created a new page. They won't allow me to broadcast at the moment. So they said, try in a few weeks' time. So apologies for people on Facebook, but still on LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. And there's possibly other platforms that I can go on as well. So this is what one person wrote. Hello, Delroy. Your sessions have been a godsend. Working from home in 2020 was a struggle for me. I felt paranoid, thinking my colleagues were having secret conversations about me. I know I don't have much to say during the sessions. I think she's responded occasionally, but not often. So that's a question. I know I don't have much to say during the sessions, but you can be assured that I have learned a lot and the advice has been invaluable. On the odd occasion when I have worked from home, my mind is more at ease and I'm able to manage my mental health. I'm looking forward to more sessions. Thank you for all you're doing. God bless. So thank you for the individual. I didn't want to call the person's name because it was sent privately, so I didn't have the permission to call the person's name. So thank you very, very much indeed. In fact, there's been other testimonials as well, but again, there's been private messages and I don't have the permission to let individuals know. So one of the aspects of moral injury is reliving what we've witnessed. That can kind of disturb us as we kind of relive. But there's a way in which the pastoral narrative disclosure, the model developed by the Australian Defence Force, has been able to kind of work with people. In fact, let me just say this as an aside. I was in Sweden literally 2 or 3 weeks ago at a friend's wedding, and I met a behavioural psychologist from Australia working in Bali, and we started talking about things psychological, and I made a comment about the stuff I was doing on moral injury, and then she made a comment. Oh, let's just go back to there. And then she made the comment that she said that the training that the Australian Defence Force put on, she said it is out of this world. It's military, but she said the training is absolutely brilliant. She said she attends the courses, it's top class, it's up to date, really good stuff. So the Australian Defence Force have been able to work with people who've experienced trauma, moral injury through war, and work with them very effectively. This is what Dr. Linus says, though. She said that what happens, they're able to detect brain activity and function when somebody's experienced moral injury, and they do the scan. And she said this, that they do that this moral injury is an invisible wound. She says she said brain scans can make the invisible wound of moral injury visible. She comments further by saying, knowing it is possible to show moral injury has affected one's brain, it validates the experience of the worker. Now, in one sense, moral injury is subjective because the person is seeing something clearly wrong, experienced it, and it's clashed against their values, and another person can watch it and may be offended by it, but it's not, they don't experience it in the same way. So in a sense, moral injury is subjective, but she says that when the person can see this, when the brain scans the brain activity, in a sense, it puts people at ease, that they're not imagining it, that something is happening to them at a deep level that's causing some response in the brain, so it kind of puts them at ease and they're not imagining things. One of the things I know about moral injury, or the little bit that I do know about it, is that people are incredibly hard on themselves. And during the pandemic, we will know, as I shared before, that many medical staff were unable to meet the demands of those who are unwell. So there was people sent home, and there's whole guilt and shame and so forth. However, during some of us will remember the MERS crisis in Korea back in 2015, and so they had their pandemic, they had an epidemic of this kind of respiratory virus. 2 or 3 years after it was all kind of resolved, some medical staff was still having problems going to work, and some were still on long-term sick because of just a trauma of working in a place where they couldn't help everybody, but just being traumatized by the whole thing. So that's career 2015. And I wanted to say as an insight, as an aside, during May 2020, as I was kind of putting my notes together, I remembered something that I did. I was asked to give a lecture. It was the health minister in Lagos, Nigeria. They'd got somebody planned for this 4-day conference, and at the last minute, the person pulled out, and they asked me literally within a week if I was able to stand in. And the title was the biopsychosocial spiritual management of patients in isolation, prevention, providing support, and mitigation. I'll repeat that again, it's a mouthful. So that's the title I was given. Biopsychosocial spiritual management of patients in isolation, prevention, providing support, and mitigation. So I did this thing online, and I was talking about what happens to us and the effects of trauma and the impact on us psychologically, emotionally, and so forth. And then towards the end of the lecture, the internet dropped out in Lagos. Anyway, we went about 10-15 minutes, and the chief medical person in government, we got into a conversation, and he said to me, he said, Dr. Hall, you're causing quite a problem here. So I said, what do you mean? Because, when you hear something like that, you think, oh gosh, what have I said? Have I offended anybody? Not understanding the culture and so forth. I said, oh, what do you mean? He says, we've had this 4-day conference, and you're the first person to mention anything about the psychological and emotional well-being. He said, over here, we see those as soft skills. But he said, to be honest, he says, medical staff are dropping like flies due to burnout. And you're the first person. And I remembered when everything was back online, the amount of questions that were asked about stigma. And I remember one question being asked, do people have to have training as a psychologist or psychiatrist to do the mental health support? So I said, no. So in England, we have the kind of mental health first aid. So the person doesn't need to be a psychologist or psychiatrist, but somebody who's trained in the kind of basics of psychological well-being and mental health. So that happened for 2020, and I've forgotten all about that. So this whole thing about what happens to the brain when we're under stress, and certainly in terms of moral injury. Now, we've looked at moral injury in terms of war and so forth, but I wanted just for a slight moment talk about, because somebody spoke, I commented and mentioned about moral injury, and they spoke about gaslighting in the workplaces, or gaslighting, or being ghosted, or being scapegoated. All that has a major impact on your well-being and your psychological well-being and your brain. Some of you, most of you will know, but if you don't know, Gaslighting was a film from the 1940s. Then it was remade in 1944. And basically, there was this crook who he knew there was some jewels hidden in the house. So what he did while his wife was upstairs, he was downstairs, and he would flick the light, the switch. And obviously upstairs, the light would be flickering, and then his wife would say, what's the problem? Well, what's the matter with the lights? And he said, no problem at all. And this would go on, and over a period of time, what he was attempting to do, he was attempting to cause his wife to go mad or have her hospitalized for being psychotic. But what he was doing, he was creating a situation, and when she was asking him about it, he was totally denying it. And that's what gaslighting is, and that can happen in our workplaces. And what that does, it does significant things to people, and it does things to your brain. So gaslighting over time, I wrote this down, might cause you to lose your sense of identity, perception. It causes you to feel unworthy and confused, because the foundation of who you are is being undermined. So you can imagine this woman, this wife of this crook, is seeing the light flickering, and she's asking him what's happening to the lights. She said nothing's happening to the lights at all. And over a period of time, she gets to a place where she's believing that she's imagining it, and she's questioning her sanity. And obviously I think the film has a twist at the end. I've not seen the film, but I understand the film has a twist. But I must confess, looking at it today, I thought, I wonder if it's on YouTube, because if it is, I'll watch it just to see actually what goes on. So you're questioning your and then in the end you have to end up questioning your sanity. What happens with gaslighting, if it goes on long enough, people then are they're led to feel very fearful and vulnerable, which can lead to anxiety, depression, and breakdown. And it's something what other people create for them to think that they're in the end going mad, and they're not going mad at all. So if you're in a workplace and you are being gaslighted as a shelf life, get the hell out of there as quick as you can. It possibly means you don't have any allies in your workplace. You might need to get support outside of the work, but this is serious. And the thing is as well, it's simply this. You can be in that environment for a year, you finally escape, but you're still suffering from the consequences of the environment 5 or 6 years later. So, and you know me, I don't use strong phrases much, but if you're in that environment and you know that's what's happening, get out of there as quickly as possible. I've said to my daughter and her husband, I said, listen, you're earning good money. Make sure you put some money away. If you're in a job and you're being overlooked for promotion and they're not treating you properly, you've got money stashed aside so you can walk away. Don't wait till you're sick. Walk away. Spend some time recalibrating and then go again. I'm serious about this, because when we are unwell, our workplaces are not really interested in us once we've left, and we are there licking up the wounds of our distress and so forth. They're not interested at all. So you must ensure that you look after yourself. That's really important. So I'm going to read a couple more testimonials. Let me just get that here for a moment. This came last week. I was deeply moved by this one. So let me just, here we go. Yes, a really touching email. So I wrote, now this is as an aside, but the testimonial was really to do with the broadcast. But I wrote, some of you may know about the Brazilian footballer who has been racially abused for a long time. And as he was being interviewed, he broke down in tears. And I wrote an article, a reflection on it called Racism, a Death Signpost. And I wrote it and I published it. I think it's got some like 700 impressions now, something like that. Anyway, somebody from, I can't remember where she's from now. I don't know. I don't think she's here in the UK. I think she's abroad. Wrote this. Hi, Delroy. Lovely to connect with you. I'm exiting a job this week due to discriminatory racist behavior. Your article showed up on my newsfeed yesterday. I have never looked up or followed racism related material, so it was through divine algorithm, I think. I'm a very resolute person, so while this experience will only add to my resolve, your article made me feel better. Thank you for it. What I would say to, in fact, what had happened, I'll tell you something about the article. I don't know if the person is watching. I'd actually sent it to a friend to read because I said I felt like it didn't have much teeth and I wanted something a bit stronger. I didn't hear back from them. I contacted somebody else and I just thought, you know what, just let it go. And I get that from Dan Quo. Dan Coe, really interesting guy. I'd really encourage you to follow him on YouTube. Dan Coe, Coe is K-O-E. It might come across kind of pan-dead, but he's inspirational and he's really, really good. Dan Coe. And he basically says, don't wait till you're the expert. Do it and learn as you go. And I thought, you know what? Let's just let the thing go. And I think it's either 700 or 800 impressions that people have engaged. And again, people have written in and spoken about the article. And what I would say to individuals, look, you might be deliberating, thinking about doing something. Just do it and see what happens. In this world full of 8 billion people, you put some stuff out there, somebody somewhere is going to interact with you. And you've got to keep going. You've got to keep going. So thanks for that response. A couple of days ago. So here's another one. I did ask the person permission twice if they wanted me to do this one, and And they said yes. So let me just, here we go. Here we go. Yes. So this person asked me, you remember sometime I asked individuals about, I asked individuals if there's a topic they'd like me to kind of pursue, and I did. So here is a testimonial of somebody. I've been given the permission to read this. I won't mention the name, been given the permission to read this, and this is what I'll do this evening. Good afternoon, Delroy. Yep, very fresh up here, cold as I can imagine. Northern people always seem friendly. So here's a testimonial. My hubby started an affair in 2020 with his ex. This was, of course, over the pandemic, hence my request for a topic on betrayal. I was absolutely devastated. Fast forward 4 years, and we are still together, but he has still been seeing her. I have really wanted to keep my family together. My boys are teenagers, so not young, but I still want us to be together for them. He has frequently talked about leaving, but never actually left. I've prayed a lot about this situation, not really understood how God has allowed someone to hurt me so much. I feel fine in myself and quite accepting of the situation. What choice do I have? You can't make people love you, but I just feel sad and disappointed as I've been with him since I was a teenager, so I have spent all my adult life with him. You also write about a new day. I fully enjoyed not opening the laptop and working today. I welcome any advice you're able to offer. And conversation continues. So I asked her twice for this, and that's a testimonial. So sometimes testimonials, people are still going through the stuff, and some of the stuff people are going through, it's unpleasant, but they're getting support and help to get through. And sometimes, you know, even with counseling, sometimes you can't make things better, but you can help people carry on another day. Sometimes counseling is not a panacea. Sometimes people have some horrible situations, and for various reasons they're not able to leave. But one of the things you can do sometimes is that you can't change the situation, but you can help people stop things from getting worse, and we can help people to find effective strategies to keep them well and whole in that difficult situation until their change actually comes. So thank you very much for sharing that with me. So how are we doing for time? Oh, listen, time. I've got 3 or 4 more minutes. Oh man, I could go on forever. Anyway, listen. What I'm going to do? Yeah, what I'm going to say. Yeah. So I just want to make a distinction as well before we go. Before I look at some things that we can do. There's a study written by Moral Wounds Run Deep, and the authors make a distinction between PTSD and moral injury. So maybe somebody might be asking, well, you know, what's the difference? So they talk about PTSD is characterized by hyperarousal, hypervigilance, and dissociation. So external things have happened, and there's a heightened sense of arousal and awareness, and kind of hypervigilance is kind of watching out where's the threat coming from. That's PTSD. Moral injury is more specific because there's a presence of strong moral emotions such as shame, guilt, and betrayal. That's what makes moral injury different from PTSD. PTSD quite often is an external threat, and moral injury is where there's been very strong, powerful emotions. And remember, Diana Silver, I quoted last week, talks about when people experience, so PTSD is external, but when people experience moral injury, the threat is on the inside. So in a sense, it's really difficult to escape. And what I want to say very, very quickly, the essential difference, and if the psychologist is watching, they'll say, oh, Delroy, it's a bit deeper than that, and maybe it is. But the difference between guilt and shame is simply this. Guilt is you recognize I've done something wrong. I shouldn't have done it. I've made a mistake. Shame is I am wrong. I'm broken. I'm bad. I'm unlovable. Very different. So guilt is external. Shame is internal, where we've internalized it. That's the basic difference of the two. And as somebody said last week in some training I was doing, shame is harder to deal with. It really is difficult to deal with. So what can you do? So I spoke about the brain, there's a particular part of the brain, the superior frontal gyrus, and I spoke about the executive center. The executive control center controls that part of the brain. But if I start going to that today, I'm going to go on for 45, 50 minutes, maybe for an hour, and I don't want to take your time up at all. So this is what some of the things, so these are some of the signs and symptoms where your brain's been affected in terms of brain fog. You have trouble managing your emotions and impulses. You start tasks, you don't finish them. You have difficulty organizing things and planning things. Your thinking is fuzzy. It's as though there's literally a fog. That happened a lot during COVID-19, where individuals were under stress for a long period of time. Thinking was impaired. Thinking was fuzzy. And listening to other people was really difficult. Paying attention to other people was difficult. Now listen to this. Post-COVID, it is suggested that that's the thing I was talking about, this whole thing around brain fog, if we are on it, 6 to 9 months to recover. So it's serious stuff. It really is serious stuff. And if you're in an environment and you're not getting the attention that you need, you can see that it can go on for a lot longer than 6 to 9 months. So some of the things that we can do is get professional help, but here are some self-help tips you can do. One of the things that we do in terms of soothing our brain sometimes is getting out of the situation as quickly as possible, taking some deep breaths. The doctor said to me, Delroy, people think it's the heart that's really important, but he said, no, it's the breath, how we breathe, that's really, really important. First, stop. Your brain is running 10 to the dozen, 12 to the dozen, 15 to the dozen, 20 to the dozen. Your brain is chaotic. You need to stop. Get off the hamster wheel if you can. Step back and breathe before the situation gets worse. If you've got a huge task, one of the things, of course, if you have brain fog, you don't function very well. So if you've got a huge task, is it possible to break the tasks down in smaller chunks so it's manageable? And then is it possible to break your working day into small chunks? So some of you may know about the Pomodoro. I must confess, the Pomodoro got through my PhD. I worked in 25-minute blocks. Timer went, 5-minute rest, another 25 minutes, 5-minute rest, another 25 minutes, 5-minute rest. So I did 4 blocks of 25 minutes, half-hour rest, and then I carried on again for another block of 4. So they're called the Pomodoro technique. There's loads of stuff online. It's been researched, and they've done lots of research on it. Very, very helpful. It got my PhD done. So 80,000 words I had to get through in 6 weeks to get it edited, sorted out before I sent it off to an editor. So, and also in terms of when you're under a lot of stress, if we can try to get good, the focus is trying to get good sleep as far as you can. And one of the things that really helps when we are chaotic or our lives are in chaos, one of the things, it almost sounds countercultural, but one of the things we need to do is to slow down. That's really important. I remember speaking to somebody recently. They go for regular weekends away, if they're able to afford it. But being able to slow down or being still is really important. That's one of the ways. There's lots more why we can soothe our brain. So that's me done. There's another link that I was going to put in, but as I said, I don't charge for what I do. But there is a website called Buy Me a Coffee. But I'm not going to put it in. I've signed up to it. So what people can do, you don't charge, but you buy them a coffee, you make a donation. But next week I'll have the link in the box ready. So moral injury, this whole thing around leads to foggy brain. It does impair impedes how we think, but there's things that we can do. Slow down, take some time out, step back if you can. And if push comes to shove and it's desperate, go to the GPs, get some time off on the sick, because things are really, really difficult. Slow down, be still, and manage our breathing as best we can. Listen, thank you very much indeed. Thank you for those who've tracked with me for the last 4 years. We're going to be looking at moral injury, some other aspects for the next couple of weeks, and then after that, we'll be moving on to another subject. Thank you for those who offered some subjects. I've got stuff there. It's going to last me another year, I'm sure. So I'm going to be around for a bit longer yet. I can't see this closing anytime soon, but I want to thank you for your time. It's 34 minutes. Thank you for your time. Go well. And if you find it helpful, let folks know about it. Share. I produce an article each week. Please read it. Interact with me. I will respond. Even if to say thank you for the interaction. I always say to individuals, your interaction whatever it is, either a love or a like or a light bulb moment. Every interaction for me is a nudge in the right direction. And even if it's another perspective, because people do write other perspectives, which challenges mine a bit, what it does, it causes the work to grow. It doesn't stunt it, it causes the work to grow, and it causes me to develop and grow as well. Wish you all the best. 35 minutes, I've gone way over your time. Enjoy the rest of your evening and the rest of your week. I'll see you next week, 7 o'clock. Take care. Bye.